Next on the news, a show of support in the war zone. The prime ministers of the Czech Republic, Poland, and Slovenia arrive in Kyiv and offer financial assistance to their neighbor. Meanwhile, an urgent appeal by Ukrainian President Zelensky to Russian soldiers. He asks them, why should you die? Surrender and we will treat you with decency. Also ahead, it's Bishop Brennan's first St. Patrick's Day as the leader of the Brooklyn Diocese. Will speak to him about the upcoming post-COVID celebrations. And this.
So many decades of people that need some healing.
We'll hear from a woman who has transformed her remorse over having an abortion into a brave fight on the front lines of the pro-life battle. I'm Christine Persichetti. Current News starts right now. A delegation of European heads of state heading to Kyiv and preparing to enter a battle zone. Russia, in their latest attack, lobbing more missiles at the Ukrainian capital, causing extensive damage and civilian deaths. Kyiv's mayor is also imposing a 35-hour curfew after that so-called, quote, difficult and dangerous moment. That group of Central European leaders coming into the city hoping to give the country support as it enters into talks again Tuesday with Russia. Chris Wynn reports on the situation there.
Kyiv under attack. At least 4 buildings and residential areas were hit by Russian missiles Tuesday morning, killing at least 4 people, according to the mayor. New satellite images show widespread destruction across Ukraine as volunteers join the effort to fight.
For Ukrainians, it's natural to protect our independence because it's independence war. And plus, definitely, we are proud to protect democratic values and principles.
The head of UN's refugee agency saying more than 3 million people have fled Ukraine since the start of the Russian invasion last month. The UN says more than half of that total have fled to Poland.
We are slowly becoming overwhelmed, and that's why we make a plea for help from the international community.
The prime ministers of Poland, Slovenia, and the Czech Republic traveling to Kyiv Tuesday to meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and the country's prime minister to offer their support.
This is not a time for countries to pretend like they can stay neutral on this particular conflict.
The head of NATO announcing leaders will convene for a summit next week to discuss possible next steps. Zelensky addressing the Canadian Parliament Tuesday ahead of his planned virtual meeting with Congress Wednesday.
They already killed 97 Ukrainian children. We are not asking for much. We're asking for justice, for real support, which will help us to prevail, to defend, to save life all of the world.
In Washington, Chris Wynn, Currents News.
President Biden is heading to Europe for an extraordinary NATO summit meeting in Brussels. He'll also attend the European Union summit meeting. Both gatherings are next Thursday, March 24th. The goal is to meet face-to-face with his European counterparts and talk about defense efforts against Russian aggression. Details of the trip are still being worked out. So far, though, there's no word if Biden will meet with Ukraine President Zelensky. Leaders of the countries surrounding Ukraine and Russia are turning to the Vatican for help.
E dice che un mondo di solidarietà e di pace fondato sulla giustizia.
Representatives from Latvia and Slovakia meeting with the Pope this week. The visits had been planned for months, but they now coincide with a critical moment for the region. This, as the Vatican recently announced the Pope will consecrate Russia and Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart of Mary during a celebration of penance on Friday. The Vatican Secretary of State, Cardinal Pietro Parolin, will be celebrating a Mass for Peace in Ukraine Wednesday at St. Peter's Basilica. All the members of the diplomatic corps accredited to the Holy See have been invited to attend. You can watch the Mass in full right here on Net TV tomorrow, Wednesday, March 16th at 2 p.m. A dramatic plea from Ukrainian President Zelensky to the Russian soldiers who invaded his country. In a video post, Zelensky is offering them a chance to survive, telling them to surrender, asking them, why should you die? What for? Zelensky said Ukraine is hearing Russian soldiers' conversations in intercepts and knows what they really think about this disgraceful and senseless war. A Fox News cameraman and Ukrainian journalist hired by the network as a consultant were killed during a Russian attack outside of Kyiv. Pierre Zarshuski died after his vehicle was struck by incoming fire on Monday. Alexandra Kushinova, who was helping the crew, was also killed. Both were with Fox reporter Benjamin Hall. Hall remains hospitalized with severe injuries. News of the deaths comes 2 days after another American journalist and former New York Times contributor Brent Renault was shot and killed near Irpin.
Усилить сотрудничество в рамках союзного государства, а на совещании в правительстве обсуждали.
A Russian journalist has been released and fined for interrupting a state-run newscast. The woman works at the Russian TV network as an editor. She barged onto the set shouting, "Stop the war," as she held up a sign saying, "Do not believe propaganda. They tell you lies here." Prior to her on-air protest, she released a video expressing regret at having spread Kremlin propaganda, adding the aggression is on the conscience of one man, Vladimir Putin. While the war in Ukraine has been impacting what you've been paying at the pump, gas prices in the U.S. have been starting to stabilize. According to GasBuddy.com, the national average for a gallon is at $4.30, which is roughly the same price as 1 week ago when the average was at $4.27. In New York City, the cost of a gallon is averaging at just under $4.50. There are a few ways you can ease the pain at the pump and cut costs. Currents News' Monica Guy has some tips that could help you keep more money in your wallet while you're on the road.
A gallon of gas costs more than it ever has.
We're at a point now at an all-time high. Remember what happened in 2008? People got out their bicycles and started walking places where possible.
Although the U.S. barely uses Russian oil, Moscow's invasion of Ukraine is still becoming a major factor. Russia is one of the world's biggest oil suppliers, and lower supply affects global prices.
Americans need to go into conservation mode and cut our consumption to improve the situation. There's no other way around it.
And with conflict abroad intensifying, experts say price increases won't be stopping anytime soon. Expert Lauren Fix from Car Coach Reports has 3 tips to help you save money. Number 1, if you're in park, turn off the engine. Don't leave your car running, not even to warm it up.
I know we typically think it's only a couple pennies to sit in the drive-thru. Park your vehicle and go inside. That will save you the most fuel.
Number 2, travel light. If you've got junk in the trunk, get rid of it. Having additional weight on your vehicle requires more fuel, and that means more cost. And number 3, keep your car in good shape. That means getting in the habit of checking your tire pressure and keeping up with maintenance.
Anytime an engine's not maintained properly, that means something's not functioning properly. So you're not going to get the best fuel economy when a pump or a hose isn't working, or a belt or a bushing or bearing, something that's causing that vehicle to struggle.
The last time prices rose this sharply was in 2005. That's when Hurricane Katrina hit the Gulf Coast, damaging oil platforms and refineries in the region. Monica Guy, Currents News.
So what's the Biden administration doing to address the issue? U.S. officials have been reaching out to both Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates in hopes of increasing production and offsetting surging oil prices. But in order for that to happen, the U.S. will have to address its severely strained relationships with both countries. Officials have also held diplomatic talks in Venezuela, but have downplayed any notion of increasing production in the heavily sanctioned country. Now to an arrest in the shootings in New York City and Washington, D.C. that targeted the homeless. The NYPD says the suspect was arrested Tuesday morning in the nation's capital. The unidentified man is linked to at least 5 shootings of homeless men. At least 2 of the victims died. The FBI has joined the investigation. So far, there's no word on a possible motive. On the front lines of the pro-life movement is a woman who says she is there because of her own story. Leslie Davis Blackwell says her remorse for having an abortion has evolved into advocacy for the unborn. Jessica Easthope has her story.
Most people would associate regret with remorse or guilt, but Leslie Davis Blackwell has transformed her regret into bravery.
We own those signs, if you will. We're the ones that have courage to stand up and to share our testimonies.
Good morning, Virginia. I'm Leslie Davis.
In 1983, Leslie says from the outside looking in, she was on top of the world. She was young, dating, and just starting a promising career in TV. But she was also in pain, dealing with an emotional and spiritual crisis stemming from having 2 abortions.
Very callous. It was scary. I just knew what I had to do. And there is a sense of relief, but then the problems start beginning.
According to a 2018 study by IBIS Reproductive Health, many women who have had abortions feel relief, but also experience sadness, regret, and guilt. The picture didn't become clear until decades later, when Leslie realized her true calling wasn't TV, but pro-life advocacy. She had a reversion to her Catholic faith on a weekend healing retreat with Rachel's Vineyard. That's when the angle of her story changed. Instead of using it to fight for abortions, she started to fight for the unborn.
I know what it's like to be on the other side of that. And now the peace that I have, no one can take away my story and what it did to me.
For years, Leslie has been attending March for Life with Silent No More, an awareness campaign of men and women who have been affected by abortion and are no longer willing to stay silent about their regret.
I think we just have so many people now, so many decades of people that need some healing.
Leslie said it took her 30 years to break her silence. Her goal now is to help others do the same and maybe even save someone from making a decision they'll regret. Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
If you or a loved one have been hurt by abortion, help is available. Just head on over to rachelsvineyard.org and silentnomoreawareness.org to learn more about the healing process. There's a lot more news headed your way. Bishop Brennan was invited by Cardinal Doyle to preach the homily on St. Patrick's Day. We asked him for a preview of what he's planning to say. Plus, we'll tell you about the spiritual legacy of Father Willie, a Jesuit priest from Ireland, and the renewed effort now to put this World War I hero on a path to sainthood. And we'll go inside a Romanian facility where orphans from Ukraine are being cared for. Bagpipes instead of buses once again on Fifth Avenue. After a 2-year pandemic hiatus, the St. Patrick's Day Parade is back. And of course, the celebration will begin on Thursday with a special St. Patrick's Day Mass at St. Patrick's Cathedral. Bishop Robert Brennan, the latest in a long line of Irishmen to lead the Brooklyn Diocese, will be the main celebrant and homilist. He joins us now to talk about it. And welcome, Bishop.
Thank you, Christine. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Yes, we're so excited. And Bishop Brennan, tell us about your Irish roots. I'm told your grandfather came from County Sligo. So when did he first arrive?
My maternal grandfather came from County Sligo. Other ancestors would go back a little bit, varying degrees. But my one grandfather, and he's the grandfather I had the chance to know. He died when I was 4 years old. But his family, part of his family is here in the U.S., part of his family is there in Ireland. They're still in the same home in Dromore West in County Sligo, where he grew up. And I've been over a couple of times to visit family. I have a few cousins over that way. So it's nice to have that connection.
Absolutely. How wonderful. So how important was your Irish heritage growing up on Long Island? Did it influence your faith at all?
I would imagine that it did. Part of being Irish involves our Catholic faith, and it all kind of blended together. I enjoyed the Irish music and the different celebrations, but it all centers around who we are as a Catholic people.
And you're delivering the homily at Mass on St. Patrick's Day. Can you give us a sneak peek at what you plan to say?
Sure. It was kind of special after I was appointed. Cardinal Doyle asked me right there on his Sirius radio program if I would preach the homily on St. Patrick's Day. And I was glad to say yes. I knew I would be there. I wouldn't miss this for anything. I want to talk about the missionary spirit of St. Patrick. I want to talk about how he promoted human dignity, how he announced that good news, the freedom that comes through the gospel of Jesus Christ, and how the missionary spirit of St. Patrick continued for generations, because I say the spiritual sons and daughters of St. Patrick brought the faith to the world. Irish missionaries went all over the world, and Irish missionaries were among other other missionaries who did a lot of work right here in New York. We can still feel the fruit of the spirit of St. Patrick.
Yeah, New York brought a lot of Irish people here, and as I'm sure you're aware, you are the 6th bishop of Irish heritage to lead the Brooklyn Diocese. Brooklyn's first bishop, John Laughlin, was born in County Down, Ireland, while Bishop Charles McDonnell, Archbishops Thomas Malloy and Brian Joseph McIntaggart, and Bishop Thomas Daly, like you, were born into Irish families in America. So why do you think the church has called so many Irish Catholics to lead this diocese?
Well, Bishop DiMaggio would remind you that there were a few Italians in between, and so the Irish and the Italian heritages were, in a sense, very strongholds of the faith, not exclusive by any means, but in this generation. But I have a feeling that as you start to see the church moving forward, you'll see many different ethnicities, because we see lots of heritages here in the New York area. Everybody's passing through New York.
Absolutely, and especially here in the Diocese of Immigrants. Now, another Brooklyn priest I'd like to mention, who was born to Irish immigrant parents, Monsignor Bernard Quinn, made a huge mark as a strong promoter of social justice and racial equality in the diocese. He's now on the road to sainthood. So, do you see him as a role model for priests in the diocese? Is he a role model for you?
Absolutely, absolutely. I knew a little bit about Father Quinn before I came here because of my connection in Rockville Center, and he had some influence there as well. He served there, and since coming here, I've read the book that Father Jervis wrote, and I've been following closely his story. It's a fascinating story, and again, he is a priest who was deeply rooted in the gospel, and because he was deeply rooted in the gospel, was a tremendous promoter of human dignity. And in his work, particularly racial equality and opportunity, we can't lose sight of the amazing contributions that Monsignor Quinn has made here in the Diocese of Brooklyn, and really, not unlike St. Patrick, that his legacy continues, that people today still seem to really love Monsignor Quinn and his legacy of faith here in Brooklyn.
Right, what a legacy indeed. Bishop Robert Brennan, thanks so much for being here, and have a happy St. Patrick's Day.
Happy St. Patrick's Day. God bless.
Now on to another Irish priest, one whose heroic sacrifices may soon earn him a spot among the saints. Father Willie Doyle was a military chaplain during the First World War. He died rescuing 2 wounded Protestant soldiers, becoming a martyr of charity and a symbol of political and religious unity in a time of division. Now a new lay group is promoting awareness of the Irish Jesuit in hopes of solidifying his cause for canonization. Convents in the Ukraine and Poland have opened their doors to war refugees. There are over 1,000 convents, 924 in Poland and 98 in the Ukraine, that are now welcoming those fleeing from their homes. In addition to shelter and food, the sisters are providing spiritual, psychological, and medical help for thousands of women and children seeking safe haven under their roofs. Meanwhile, as Russian attacks on civilians in Ukraine escalate, displaced children, some orphaned and others with special needs, are now being cared for in Romania. Miguel Marquez reports.
Hello, my name is Sasha.
9-year-old Sasha Resnichenka, one of hundreds of Ukrainian kids with no parents or separated from them, now being cared for in Romania. I have no mother and father. They died, he says. I lived in several places, and I know it's important to listen to my teachers and behave myself. This government facility north of Bucharest has taken in 27 kids, all with varying degrees of physical or mental disabilities. This is a tragic moment for all of us, she says. It's a huge challenge for the system and our community, but we have the resources to care for these children. These kids, along with a few teachers, fled Ukraine's southern Odessa region last week. Our trip took all morning and all night, he says. I don't know how to explain it. Was it a long trip? Stas Glickman turned 11 the day we visited. I wanted a smartphone for my birthday, he says, but I'm afraid to ask the teachers. Angelina, Stas's big sister, says their mother is still in Ukraine, unable to travel. I'm thinking about my family, she says. My mother can't walk. She was injured in a vehicle accident. They all know a war is happening back home. They don't totally understand it. There is a war in Ukraine, he says, so the director of our school decided to bring us here. Nearly 220 Ukrainian children like Sasha are now in Romania, say immigration officials here. Their futures before the war? Uncertain. Kids who have no parents with them, and for now, no country.
How do you feel about the future? Where will all this go?
We believe in a better future and that the war will be over, she says. I believe Ukraine will stay united as a nation.
That was Miguel Marquez reporting. You too can help the people of Ukraine. Just head on over to thetablet.org/where to give to help Ukraine. There you can find a list of reputable charities working on the ground. You can also give aid and support to our Ukrainian brothers and sisters in need by donating to the Diocese of Brooklyn's Compostela Fund. 100% of the money collected will provide direct assistance to those affected by the war. Just make a check payable to the Compostela Fund of the Archdiocese of Brooklyn with the notation Ukraine and mail it to Diocesan Finance Office, 310 Prospect Park West, Brooklyn, New York, 11215. Still to come on Currents News, a heartwarming mother and child reunion. After a life and death battle with COVID, a new mom finally meets her little bundle of joy. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. It's a long-awaited reunion. 3 months after giving birth, a new mom is finally able to hold her baby, something she couldn't do earlier because of a severe case of COVID. Currents News' Jessica Easthope has her story.
98 days. That's how long it took for Rowena Salas to meet her newborn baby Oliver face to face. Sunrise Hospital in Nevada recorded the moments when they were finally reunited. It's been a long, heartbreaking road for the family who stepped in to care for baby Oliver. After his dad died in 2021, he only had his mother left. In November, Rowena caught COVID-19 while pregnant, had complications, and on Thanksgiving Day delivered baby Oliver, but then took a turn for the worse. She was transferred to another hospital and put on an ECMO machine, a step above a ventilator, for months.
Yep, we're ready.
Even when she finally woke up, her body and lungs couldn't process oxygen quite yet, so she remained on life support while awake.
Rowena is a very strong and dedicated individual, and that was very clear in her recovery. She would often drive the rehab team, the nurses to mobilize getting out of bed and ambulating and walking around.
Dr. Michael Gale, who oversaw her recovery, says she was driven to get better by her baby.
Her room was covered in pictures of her family and her baby, and her family were very engaged, and I think that really helped with her recovery.
Rowena still needs oxygen and isn't strong enough to hold baby Oliver for very long. She gets discouraged. She can't do more. Relatives say Rowena's current goal is to get healthy enough to push Oliver and his sister in a stroller. Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
A story. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.